Hi, I'm Rob. It's garage time.
Hey everybody, welcome to the garage. Over the course of the last video or two, the three-wheeler has been living outside for a little while. And the reason is because this thing has taken up some space. And it's not mine. I did not make another impulse purchase of a motorcycle. This bike is a 1985 Yamaha FJ1100 that belongs to the son of an old bandmate and good friend of mine. Andrew Frost owns this fine piece of machinery. His dad, Adam, and I were in bands for a really long time. In fact, Adam runs Mendon Motors, is the owner and proprietor of Mendon Motors in Mendon, Massachusetts. Go there if you need some fine service on your car. He's great. Anyway, Andrew had contacted me because this nifty old tank needs fork seals, and because of my advanced age and wisdom, he asked me for help in replacing those. So that's what we're going to do. That's our project for today, or maybe the next couple of days. Let's get down there in the front end of this thing and I'll show you what I got to do. Okay, it's wobbly handheld camera time. All right, so we got to replace the fork seals. That's these bits right here. No, those are the dust wipers. The fork seals are underneath. Because they are leaking like the proverbial Niagara Falls, and leaks so badly that they have soaked the brake pads, and his front brakes don't work so great. In fact, I can feel liquid ickiness on that. Gross. So replacing fork seals, I've done it before on several of my motorcycles, and it's a bit fiddly, but it's not particularly crazy or difficult. The challenge here is that this is a 1980s era motorcycle, and back in those days, the Japanese manufacturers were struggling with ways to mitigate dive in the front end when you get on the brakes. So on this bike right here, there is this valve mechanism that is intended to adjust the damper valving, I should say, in the fork to mitigate that dive. It makes doing the fork seals a bit of a pain in the ass because, as you can see, here's the brake caliper, here's the hose that comes down from the lever up on the handlebar, and then there's this little hose that comes around here to the anti-dive valve that is attached to the front of the fork. And so what that means is that I have to disconnect that and leak brake fluid basically all over the place. I would rather that I didn't have to do that, but I have to do that. So ordinarily I would just throw that bike up on the center stand and put a jack under the front of it and get that front wheel up off the ground and start taking things apart. But this header pipe right here is aftermarket, and because of the mounting and the path with which it travels, the center stand has been removed. I have to figure out a way to get this thing up in the air so that I can get that front wheel off. I have a plan, don't I always? Don't bump into it. There we go. So yeah, I am jacking the front of the bike up underneath the header. Is this best practices? Most would say no, but it has been my experience that it can be done. You just have to go slowly, watch the header carefully, and before you start jacking, you have to make sure that all the connections of the header to both the engine and the chassis of the bike are solid. And you make sure that the joint between the header collector and the tailpipe isn't going to flex out of position. You can take this shortcut. Otherwise, I would have had to take the header off and jack it up underneath the frame or underneath the sump of the engine. But this little shortcut worked out on Andrew's bike. As always, don't try this at home. Your results may vary. Crush it. Going down. We got this thing jacked up. Let us begin the process of denuding it of its front end parts, starting with the greasy, oily speedometer cable. Ew. This is pretty gross. Ew. Get out of there, you. Ew. That. I am surprised to find that these fender mounted fork stabilizer bolts are not especially tight. Fork stabilizer, also known as the fork brace, and the back half of the fender. There it is. Okay, there's our fender. Now we got to get the wheel off. These bolts are not super tight either. There we go. Cool. So, yeah, there we go. Good. Good deal. Now, you're not supposed to hang these things from their hoses, but, you know, needs must. There we go. There we go. What's that? Speedometer cable is undone. The brake calipers are loose from the rotors. The pinch bolts are undone. Got to undo the axle bolt and pull it out, and then this front wheel will just fall right down out of here. This thing right here, I bet that's a 21. On you go, brother. There we go. Oh, when I said this was a 21, haha, I didn't know what I was talking about. It's a 22. Oh, I didn't even... None of these things are super tight. Whoops. Come on. There is the axle nut. There is the nut spacer. There we go. Ta-da! A wheel spacer. Also goes on a bearing seal. And the speedometer drive. First, let's put these things back together so things don't get misplaced, because that's always a pain in the butt. There we go. When I first agreed that I would do this for Andrew, I did a bit of online research because I knew about these things and I wanted to see if there was any mitigation for getting them off of there or doing anything with them. And there is, but it's more than I want to deal with. So all I'm going to do is undo these banjo bolts. There is a bleeder on the caliper right here, and then another bleeder on the anti-dive unit right here. And if all I have to do is open that bleeder, I will be very happy. Let's see if such a thing will unscrew. I don't like that. I would prefer that. Ooh, that thing's pretty stuck. What about this one? The one thing we don't want to do oh yeah, that one's stuck too. Yeah. Okay, so anyway, right. There we go. Let's try not to let too much juice, brake fluid drip out. And then, there. And because I couldn't both hold the anti-dive hose above the master cylinder and continue disassembling the fork legs from the bike, I zip tied the hoses to the mirror mounts. Yep. There we go. And we're not taking the bolt out, we're just loosening it up. The clip-on handlebars at the top, yeah. Also, have a clamp on the fork leg. Yeah. I'm going to poke this camera up in there so you can see a little bit. Right up in here. These are the two bolts I have to undo. There's two 12 millimeters that hold this, the bottom clamp of the bottom triple clamp on there. Right, two bolts on this side and two nuts on this side. So, okay. Well, how about that? The lower of the two. There we go. It's a little tricky getting them. There we go. There it is. Ta-da! The fork leg is out. Here's the right-hand fork leg taken out of the triple clamps. And then this cap right here. Pop, oh, ooh, ew. I'm going to show this to you right here. It's nice and rusty down in there. That does not make me feel good. Yeah. Let's go clamp this in the vise and then we got to think about it. I had to wait for a special tool to arrive. This special tool right here. This is from RPM Motorsports. As you can, it's just a simple hex made out of 6061 aluminum with a 3/8 square broached hole in it. so you can put it on a 3/8 extension, like so. Ready? Come on. We can do it one-handed. Click. There it is right there. Step 1 of the fork leg disassembly is draining the oil. And step 1 of draining the oil is removing the fork cap. You can stick a 12mm hex key into the preload adjuster and the fork cap will unscrew that way. But the internal hex on the fork cap is 27mm, so the special hex tool is the preferred method. It's wise to keep a hand on the cap as it's being unscrewed because it's under pressure from the fork spring and it can pop out and go flying. Ask me how I know. Once the fork cap is undone, lift this out like so. See this long rod that's coming out? That is the rod that controls the damping adjustment. It's a D-section piece of rod, meaning it's got a flat on one side. Hopefully you can see that. Another interesting thing on this is right here, this business is the fork preload. There's the lowest setting, the middle setting, the highest setting. There are 3 settings for the fork preload. And down in here, it's a little hard to see. I don't know if you can see that there's a slot in there as well. These adjustments are somewhat crusted up together, and so I'm going to have to fiddle with those to make them work again so that they'll work for Andrew if he wants to adjust his front suspension. Okay, so here we have this. This is going to go here. There's some other pieces that have to come out before I take the spring out. This is the pressure cap for the spring preload adjuster, which will go drop it right in there. Get in, come on you, in you go. Let go of that. And then this is the centering cap for the spring. Grab the spring, out it comes. There is the spring. Grab the spring with an appropriate rag and draw it out of the leg. Boom, there we go. Now, you'll pardon me, I'm going to have to find a suitable container to put these in. And like a dummy, I didn't grab one immediately. So we're just going to lay this right here on top of the mess, and then I will be back and we will continue this. So now what we got to do is drain the oil out of there. If we take a flashlight, shine it down in there. Ooh, you know, there's not a whole lot of oil down in there, and that's probably because this was the leg that was leaking the most. But we are going to drain it anyway, and I will show you what I do to do that. Okay, on motorcycle forks, at the bottom of the fork leg, there is always a drain screw. Ouch. Ouch, my broken old knees. Yeah. And that's right here. We remove that, and then the oil will flow out of the leg into the pan. Now, one thing I've noticed is that, whoops, nope. The oil sometimes does like to squirt out. So what we're going to do is turn the screw the rest of the way out. Oh, there we go. Yeah, this one's got a leak, and so its oil level is low. We'll just let that drain for a while. We shall replace the drain screw in its hole. What do I do with the screwdriver? Oh, there it is. So that enough so that my soft jaws don't fall out. Tip it over. There, good. Here's the hole where the axle goes through. Here's where the pinch bolt was that you saw me undo. And so the bolt that holds the damper rod to the fork slider is right there. It's a little hard to see. There we go. that is a 10 millimeter socket head that I have to undo. And in order to undo that, I have to hold the damper rod still. Okay, so there's one more screw that I gotta undo on this thing, and it's this screw right here, this little Phillips head. And what I have been able to determine from reading various forums and looking at the parts, exploded parts breakdown, is it's an anti-rotation screw for the damper rod. But you're not supposed to use that to hold the damper rod in place when you undo the damper rod bolt in the bottom of the fork slider. It can get bent, it can get stuck, it can become really hard to undo. And what I have found is that on both of these fork legs, it's not going to come out without me stripping that screw out, which says to me that this thing is jammed into the fork slide, into the damper rod. Now, let's take a look down inside the fork leg, inside the stanchion, and I'll show you what's going on in there. Let's straighten this out a bit. And as I am so fond of saying, I'm going in, boys. Okay. We are sliding down into the fork leg, and you can see right there an internal hex, a 12-point internal hex, and that is the top of the damper rod. So that star there, what you got to do is fit the special tool into that star to hold the top of the damper rod as you are twisting that 10 millimeter socket head on the bottom of the fork slider. So let me draw this out, and then I'll show you how that fits in there. There we go. Okay, you can see the special tool. I will let it fall down a little bit. We slide them down into the fork leg, and then we take the special tool and rotate it until it pops into 6 of the points of that 12-point internal hex. And there it is. And that's how you hold the top of the damper rod. We'll draw it out. Boom. There we go. Oop, I hear the rain coming. Let us see if we can. There we go. Okay. Dust seal out. And spring clip out. Yeah. Now, the other one had broken. And that's because they're very rusty. These things get really rusty. They live in the top of the fork leg for their whole life, and they get pretty crusty, and they will break. So I have ordered 2 new ones. This is what I'm waiting for to come from Partzilla. Okay. Like so. There we go. Cool. Oh, battery died. Cambot 10's battery died, so let's take a moment and put a new battery in there. Oh, and one of the other things that has really made me happy is the fact that I put an 8mm socket on this bleeder on the anti-dive valve and gave it a little twist, and it's coming loose. I'm not, which makes me happy. So I'm not going to, it's not going to break. We're going to unscrew it all the way, and then, oh, there we go. Great, good. While we've got it up in the vise, let's see if we can get this, if we have luck with this bleeder as well. Ooh, it moved. It moved. PB blaster. PB blaster. There we go. And then, with any luck, there we go. Much better. Well. Let us get the screw out of there. There's our screw with our seal washer. Now what I want to do is withdraw the damper rod. There it is. The damper rod can go over here. There we go. Rebound spring. Cool. There's the damper rod and the rebound spring. Now I have to do a thing that seems a whole lot like violence, but it is the way that you get these seals out. Put you in sideways. Soft jaws and a vise are your friend. Tighten it up. And then what you do is you take the fork stanchion and you hammer you use the bottom fork leg bushing to hammer out the seal and the upper fork leg bushing, like so. Ta-da, done. There's the seal. There's the seal washer. And here is the upper fork leg bushing. Here is the lower bushing. Okay. So one of the things that we got here is we got our little stop screw. And now because the damper rod is out, this thing will come out nicely. One of the many repairs you have to do to these things. And as you can see, the screw is slightly bent. And by slightly bent, I mean noticeably bent. Yeah, come on. Oh, it really does. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so, yep. The end of this thing is kind of mangled. Oh, you know what? It looks like this thing was put together badly at some point in its past. We'll have to repair that. Okay, there's that. We got the fork leg all apart, and so now what I got to do is I got to clean it up inside. There's some gunk in there. Once again, my new favorite tool. There we go. We are looking down into the fork slider, and you can see right there. You can see right there. There's a whole bunch of gunk that I need to clean out. You can see all that garbage, all that gunk from the oil on the sidewall of the fork slider. You can see that little groove that's kind of at the top of the screen. That's where the screw comes in. That is the position index for the damper rod. I got to get in there with some CRC and a brush and some rags and clean all that junk out. Looks good, man. Good, okay. Now we gotta clean out the snapper and groove. Now, you don't necessarily have to do that. You can, in fact, get away with simply scraping the slot out with a screwdriver, as you saw me do, and that will be just fine. I like to do that little extra step right there just because I'm a giant nerd, and that's the way I roll. Down the street into next week. Yep, roll it up a bit and then jam it down in there. Yeah, so that it gets cleaned up. In you go. Yeah. There's that. Going up. And going back down. I'm gonna jam it in there nice and tight. There we go. Going up. There we go. Coming out. Boom. Our fork slider friend is cleaned up on the inside. Let's clean it up on the outside as well. A little bit. A little bit. You guys don't really need to see this, do you? No, you don't. Ew. Now, you can see some like dings on the end of this damper rod. That notch right there is where the stop screw goes. You see that little square notch right there? Okay. But what I can see is marks on this damper rod right there and right there. Marks of damage where somebody put this damper rod in and then just cranked it down on top of the stop screw, which is why the end of the stop screw is so frickin' mangled. Oh, the other thing that we're going to do is clean out these threads. Clean oil out of the threads. So that when I apply the Loctite to the damper rod screw, it will do its job. We're just going to clean up these little areas of damage. Oh, bloody hell. As they say. There we go. Magnets. They are my friend. Okay. Like I said, you can see that the tip of the screw has been smushed and flattened and bent. And that's because some ham fist in the past put the damper rod down in there and then just tightened the damper rod down on top of the stop screw. And you can see that the mushed end of the stop screw fits right into that divot on the bottom of the damper rod, that damage on the bottom of the damper rod. And what it should do is go nicely into this slot. I'm going to grab my yellow paint marker, and then we will mark the damper rod in line with the, we'll mark it on the side so that I can see where it is. Yep. And then we will mark it here so that I can see where it is until I put the special tool in there, and then I won't be able to see where it is. Yeah, cool. Here is our seal washer. Now, the last time I annealed this seal washer, you saw me do it with my oxyacetylene cutting torch, which I used because it's extra hot, does things nice and quickly, but you can absolutely anneal these things with a propane torch, and so that's what we'll do right now. And light it up, and now we're going to heat this thing.
with the butane. Now, ideally you would want this to get red hot to get best softness, but if you can see it turning blue, that's pretty good too. There. I pronounce this washer annealed. Okay, let's repair the stop screw as best we can by knocking it into some kind of shape. That's better. The stop screw goes in. Nice and tight against its rubber seal. There we go. Drain screw goes in. Drain screw. Stop screw. Okay, so there's one thing you got to be careful of. At the very bottom of the fork stanchion, there is a collar with some shims,
which will fall out of the stanchion bottom when it's pointed downward.
These shims go on top of the stanchion. So what I am going to do, oil up the bottom of the fork leg.
Then we take the bottom collar with the shims and insert it into the fork stanchion.
Put it in there, set it sideways so that the bushing and shims don't fall out of the fork leg. Slide it in. Like so. Come on, in you go. There we go. Here's our stop screw. Here is our damper rod. Here is our rebound spring. We will take the damper rod and the rebound spring. We're going to aim this down fork leg, so, with the paint mark in line with the screw. All the way to the bottom. And there it is. The damper rod is locked in to the stop screw. Now, some blue Loctite. Just that. In you go. $27. There we go. 27 foot-pounds. Yay. Go. And the seal washer.
It occurs to me that in that last sequence, I may very well have forgotten to turn the field recorder on. So I hope that the audio wasn't too terrible. All right, we have our seal tool, and we have we need our second biggest hammer. There we go, yay. And down you go, and yay, that was easy. The fresh and brand new oil seal, and a little bit of oil on the inside of the seal. Let's make sure we drip some on my fingers, because that's what you need to do. And then onto the fork leg and down. There we go. The tool. There we go. The seal is in. Here we have the dust seals, which we can't put in until we get the new oil seal clips. Okay, the legs all together, the seal is in, and we've poured our 424 milliliters of fork oil, our 14.3 ounces. Yeah, I got to move it from being clamped on the fork slider to being clamped on the stanchion so that this does not happen. Ooh, 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 ooh. Yeah, ew. So, clamp it in the area of reduced diameter that goes in between the triple clamps at the headstock of the motorcycle, and boom. There we go. Spring goes in with the small windings at the bottom, the large windings at the top. In goes the spring, yay! In you go. Boom. In goes the oil, all 424 milliliters. Drip, drip, drippity, drip, 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 drip. I did turn the voice recorder on, didn't I? I hope so. One of the things that happens when you're doing these, for me anyway, when I'm doing these tutorials or doing, videographing my work here, is that I get distracted. I get distracted because not only am I doing the work, I'm minding the videography. And when that happens, I can, in fact, wind up forgetting what the hell I'm doing. And then pouring oil all over the floor inadvertently. Okay, so here we have our spring centering washer. Boom. Here we have our preload washer. You can see the mark on the top from the preload and the mark on the bottom from that washer. Boom. And then the fork cap assembly. There's not an insignificant amount of crust on this motorcycle. Okay, so you go in there. This little spring goes on the rod. The rod goes down in. And then what we got to do is we got to fish it around to fit this D section rod back into the D hole on the damper rod. That is not it. Now this can be a little bit fiddly because there it is, got it. We will press it in, get it into the threads. There we go. And then all of these tools are gonna have to get CRC'd because they are all pretty friggin' dirty. There we go. Here we have my my 3/8 drive torque wrench, which is in inch pounds, not foot pounds. So what we can do is take this, grab the phone, even though my hands are slightly oily, and do a little bit of math. We will convert from foot-pounds to inch-pounds with the simple expedient of multiplying by 12. Okay, 17 foot-pounds times 12 equals 204 inch-pounds. Can we get to 204? Yes, we can. Right there is 205, 204. There we go. How about that? Right on. This fork leg is back together, except for the oil seal ring, the oil seal clip, and the dust wipers. So let's rinse and repeat for fork leg number 2, which, as you may imagine, went every bit as smoothly as leg number 1, minus the giant oil spill. Hey, so today what we're doing is we're going to put the fork legs back into the triple clamps on the bike. And as you can see, the dust wiper is not pressed down into the fork slider, but I can put those on and slide and tap these down into the sliders with the forks on the bike. There are 3 notches here, you can see. There's a skinny one and a medium width and a wide width. The skinny one goes at the front. So let's slide that up through the triple clamps and then tighten the bolt to hold it in place. Very good. Change the scene. The smallest notch is at the front. Go up. Come on. Move that out of the way. In you go. Oh, there we go. That's nice. Tighten the top triple clamp nut. And then we tighten the handlebar nut. Now, underneath. Oh, come on. Oh, there we go. There we go. It helps if you put the wrench on the right side of things. There we go, there's that. And, okay. Let us, there we go. Okay, we got one in. Yay. Okay, so a day goes by and parts show up. In this package are the oil seal clips. 2 of them. Uno, dos. Here we are. And in you go. There's that. Number 2. There you go. There we go. There. Number 2 is in there. Okay, cool. Then the dust wipers. Come on, in you go. There. How's that look? That looks perfect. I'm not using this, the seal press tool in its closed configuration, because if I do that, then it presses on this edge right here. It presses on the wiper edge, and we don't want to press on that. What we want to do is press on the outer edge and get that pressed down into the fork legs. So in you go. And punto final. There. Okay, so we're gonna put a wheel back on, but before we can put the wheel back on, we gotta do a thing. We gotta throw a little bit of grease into a wheel bearing. Right down there in the wheel, you can see some crust of rust. Ordinarily, I would take all this apart and knock that bearing out. Ooh. So what I'm going to do to mitigate that is bring the wheel over here, and we will take my high temperature grease and gloop it in there. Oh, that feels much better already. Yeah. Let's flip this thing over. And one of the tricks I use to get grease into places like this where we're having them, where we don't want to pull the seal because that'll damage the seal, I'll show you what I do. Here we have one of my monoject chemical injectors. This one has some of that grease in it. So what we do is we jam it into the seal and squeeze. And then, oh, yep, there we go. In you go, more grease. You know, greasing things with your bare fingers is a giant pain in the butt. I hate doing it, kind of. Oh well. Yeah. Where was I? Right. Okay, so grease. Take off the washer and the throttle side spacer. Whoops. And then just throw the speedometer drive on the ground. Ordinarily, in order to align these, what you would do is you would loosen all the triple clamp bolts, loosen the headstock bolt that attaches the top triple clamp to the headstock, and then you put the wheel on, you put the axle in, and you wiggle everybody around, and you tighten the axle bolt first, and then you tighten things progressively up the fork through the bottom triple clamp to the top triple clamp. And the last thing you tighten is the headstock nut. But because, as you can see, this thing goes right through, everything's in good alignment. That's because I didn't touch the headstock bolt. So, up you go. Cool. Oops, nope. There is a tab on the fork leg that locks the speedometer into position. And there it is. And there it is. Ta-da! The washer and the nut. Okay, the axle bolt goes to 50 foot-pounds to hold that in place, right? Oops. There it is. There's 50 foot-pounds. The pinch bolts go to 14 foot-pounds, also known as 168 inch-pounds. Come on, get on there. There we go. 168 inch-pounds. That's 168 inch-pounds. Is up there on the triple clamps. We need to tighten the bottoms to 17 foot-pounds, which, if I recall correctly, is 204. that. There's 17. Cool. Go. We have achieved tightness. So you saw me grease those wheel bearings. What I want to do is I want to take a listen to see if I can hear these things grumbling at all. So let's spin it. Use the good old, yeah, here, a little grinding. They're a little noisy. They're not horrible. Just horrible enough. This will get him down the road for the rest of the summer, but I think I'm gonna impose on him to bring this thing back, and I'll stick some wheel bearings in it. You'll get to see how that happens. Okay, so let's reassemble the rest of this right now. And that reassembly began with a thorough cleaning of the brake rotors, which were soaked in fork oil. And then the brake calipers went back on, the hoses got reattached, and everything got tightened but not torqued, because I knew I was going to have to take the calipers off again once I got into swapping in the new brake pads. Once more with the CRC to clean fork oil off the calipers, especially off that left side caliper, which was really soaked. I just poisoned myself. And then I took the brake bleeders out of both the anti-dive valve and the caliper and cleaned them up on my wire wheel and blew them out with some compressed air. And then I added some anti-seize onto the threads of the bleeders to keep them from getting stuck again, and put them back into their places on the anti-dive valve and the calipers. And even though this one's got brake fluid in it, the very next day I got busy replacing the old fork oil soaked brake pads with the new ones. First thing you got to do are pull these little spring clips that go through a hole in the pad retention pin. There we go. There's one. There we go. How about you? How are you looking? Oh, this one is a bit crusty, but very reusable. Once you pull one of the pins, it doesn't matter, top or bottom. The brake pad spring will pop out, and you can just set that to the side until you're ready to put the new pads in. And then the second pin, there's that. The pads can take a little wrestling to get out, so I used a small pin punch to lever the pad up, and then grabbed it with a pair of pliers and pulled it out the rest of the way. You don't have to punch your GoPro the way I did. Sorry about that. Once you get the pads out, you have to press the pistons all the way in to make room for the new pads. To do that, I take the caliper off, and then I use a deep C-clamp with a piece of steel strap on the inside to press the piston, and I use the old brake pad on the outside of the caliper to prevent the paint on the caliper from getting all scarred up from the pressure pad on the C-clamp. Press one piston in and then press the other side in, and once you're done, you can put the caliper back on the fork and you're ready to put the new pads into the caliper. Yeah. In goes one side. Come on. And in goes the pin. That. Take the other pad and in you go. Come on. There it is. The pin goes through both pads and into the hole. The other side. There we are. Pad pressure spring goes in like so. Spring through the other caliper and through the hole. You see that arrow pointing at one of the holes in the pad retention pin that you have to stick the little spring clip through. That bottom one there isn't terrible to do. The top is kind of behind the hoses, and it can be a giant pain to get that in there. This one's a pain, this one not so much. And then we take the caliper cover and we just snap that into place. Okay, now we're ready to bleed. We're starting on the left side of the bike because the left side caliper is farthest from the master cylinder on the handlebar. When I bleed brakes, I like to use a combination of a Mighty-Vac vacuum pump and hand bleeding. I'll use the Mighty-Vac for the initial bleeding and then finish it off with some hand bleeding. And the reason I do that is because it has been my experience over the last couple of decades of using the Mighty-Vac, this particular Mighty-Vac in fact, that once you've pulled all the air out of the lines, the Mighty-Vac will continue to pull air around the threads of the bleeder and fool you into thinking that you haven't completed the bleeding job. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's feeling really good. Yeah. That's a 2-finger brake right there. Hell yeah. Front fender, front of the fender. Speedometer cable. There's that. And that. Excuse me. Is that what I think it is? There it is. Okay, we're under the center stand mounting. Onto the side stand. There we go. Man, this thing weighs a ton. Compared to my little Vitpillin, what a tank. That's better. there you go. I pronounce that a success. And I will be glad when Andrew comes over to get it. As I am so fond of saying, I hope you enjoyed the video. And please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. And I'll see you around the channel.
1, 2, 3, 4. Well, my daddy, he raised stock cars a long, long time ago at New England's fastest quarter mile, good old Westboro Road. He and Mom would rally around in their MGTD, but they bought a Porsche 356 the year my mom had me. I was raised by gearheads, this apple fell not far from under Daddy's tillage, messing around with cars.